Before the wedding, Alpha J stood before me, his jaw tight, his eyes shadowed with a storm of hesitation and hope. "Can you give me a month?" he asked, his voice low, almost pleading. "A month for what?" I shot back, my tone sharper than I intended, though my heart already braced for the answer. He exhaled deeply, ignoring the edge in my voice. "A month to try rekindling my relationship with Linda Manwaring. She's my fated mate, and this might be the moon goddess's blessing." Ah, fated mate. I should have guessed. Jay and I were never fated mates. I was his convenient choice, never his destined one. So, if it doesn't work out, then what? Another month? I tilted my head, forcing a faint smile that practically screamed, "Go ahead, rip my heart out." "If it doesn't work," he said, his gaze steady, "I'll come back to you. I'll marry you and leave her behind." Forever. Forever? I echoed, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. Lucy, my wolf, growled faintly in the back of my mind. Let me claw him, just once. But I didn't argue. Instead, I gave him the faintest of smiles and replied, "Go ahead. Give it a try. Life's too short for regrets, right?" Relief washed over his face, so palpable it made my chest tighten. That night, he drove off lighter and freer than I'd seen him in years. And me? I quietly packed my belongings. I called home. "Mom," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "The wedding's off. I'm coming home to help with the Shadow Fang pack." My mother didn't even feign surprise. If anything, she sounded downright gleeful. "Finally, your father and I always said that man wasn't reliable. 10 years and he still couldn't commit." She scoffed. "Honestly, sweetheart, we thought you'd lost your mind." I let her rant, offering a few hums here and there. "Perfect timing," she added. "The pack just allied with the Silver Claw pack, and they're looking for an experienced wolf trainer. I'll set everything up." Sure," I murmured, cutting the conversation short. The thought of diving into training rogue wolves or mentoring pups sounded perfect, anything to keep my mind occupied. I glanced around my apartment, taking in the scattered wedding souvenirs, personalized candles, silk napkins embroidered with our initials. Lucy huffed again. 10 years with that jerk. 10 years of being second choice. You should have let me bite him." I said nothing, just stared at the remnants of a dream I had built and lost. It hadn't always been like this. Once, I believed in Jay. I stood by him when his pack struggled, when he had nothing to offer but empty promises. I turned down my rightful place as alpha of the Shadow Fang pack to stay by his side. I had a choice. I could have gone home, inherited my pack, and become alpha. Instead, I chose him, without hesitation. His Red River pack was small, insignificant, a speck along the Mississippi River, nothing compared to my family's power. But I didn't care. I just wanted him. I imagined a life together, building something from the ground up, proving that love was stronger than destiny. So I waited. While my friends built their lives, marrying, having kids, moving on, I stayed. I turned down every opportunity my parents offered and let year after year slip by, waiting for him to finally say, "Let's get married." Reunions were the worst. "So, when's the wedding?" someone would always ask, followed by laughter. My friends covered for me, claiming I just wasn't ready for the grave of marriage. I played along, smiling and pretending it didn't sting. But deep down, I wanted it more than anything. To be Luna in more than just name. To be his partner, his future. But the truth was, Jay wasn't waiting for the right time. He was waiting for her. The return of Linda. Manwaring. 3 months ago, Linda came back. I ignored the signs because Jay proposed to me. Suddenly, he threw himself into wedding plans. He helped pick out the dress, sat through endless food tastings, and obsessively debated wedding favors. He was attentive, patient, always there, and I let myself believe it was real, that he had finally chosen me. That illusion shattered one late night. I woke to the faint glow of light beneath his study door. Curiosity, or perhaps something more desperate, led me down the hall. Quietly, I peeked inside. He wasn't working. No spreadsheets, no maps, no alpha duties. In his hands were Linda's things: a scarf, a journal, and a trinket box she'd left behind. He held them like treasures, his fingers brushing the scarf's fabric with an unbearable tenderness. The look on his face, a mix of longing and love, made my stomach twist. It was the kind of look you give someone who owns your heart. Someone you've never let go. I froze in the doorway, torn between stepping inside and walking away. He didn't see me, too absorbed in the memories those objects carried. And in that moment, I saw everything. The way his shoulders slumped under an invisible weight, the quiet sigh that slipped past his lips. This wasn't just nostalgia. It was longing. This was about Linda, her ghost, or at least the memory of her, hung heavy in the air. Whether Jay and I got married or not didn't depend on love or destiny. It depended on her, on whether she decided to take him back. And me? I was just a placeholder, a stand-in, the second choice. They say the things we can't have in our youth haunt us forever. If a missed opportunity or a forgotten dream can ache like that, how much worse must it be for someone who once meant everything? I stepped back into the shadows before he could notice me and returned to our bedroom. The bed felt too big, too cold. I lay there staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself I didn't care. But the tightness in my chest told a different story. The days leading up to the wedding blurred into chaos. Flowers, seating arrangements, the Luna ceremony rehearsal. I threw myself into every detail, hoping the frenzy would drown out my doubts. I told myself it was fine, that Jay's occasional distracted glances and absent-minded smiles didn't mean anything, that his late nights in his study were just wedding stress. Then, one afternoon, we received a shipment of wedding souvenirs, delicate hand-painted glass favors engraved with our initials. I picked up one of the boxes and frowned. The packaging was careless, the wrappings half done. One of the glass favors tumbled out, landing in my palm. It was beautiful, no doubt, but as I stared at the etched initials, *K and E*, my breath caught in my throat. K and E, not J and me, Jay and Linda. My fingers tightened around the fragile glass as the truth crashed over me. This wasn't an accident. It was a sign. And in that moment, the delicate favor shattered between my fingers, sharp edges cutting into my palm. But I barely felt the pain because the real wound was deeper. It had been there all along. By the time I decided to request a return for the souvenirs, the merchant's stubbornness had worn me down. After what felt like hours of fruitless arguing, I gave up. The souvenirs were coming home with me, packed or not. It was nearly 3:01 a.m. by the time I finally sat down to finish wrapping them. My muscles ached, my eyelids were heavy, and exhaustion tugged at me like a relentless tide. Still, I pushed through. Alpha J wasn't back yet. He'd gone to another pack for an event, and his flight had landed hours ago. Just as I reached for my phone to check on him, the front door unlocked with a soft click. He walked in carrying a bouquet of fresh flowers and a box of gifts. His presence warm but strangely heavy. He greeted me as he always did, with a soft kiss on the cheek. "Selena," he began, his voice gentle, but tinged with something somber. "Thank you for staying with me all these years." My heart tightened. I knew where this was going. When Jay graduated, he had a wild, impossible dream. He didn't want to follow the Red River Pack's traditional path. Instead, he wanted to forge his own. No one believed in him. Not his family, not his friends, except me. I defied my parents, sold the shops and houses under my name, and handed over every penny of my dowry to help him build his dream. I gave up everything for him, believing he was worth it. Time proved me right. Jay transformed the Red River Pack into a powerhouse, admired across the Mississippi River territory. Young, successful, and driven, he became everything he'd ever wanted to be. But now, standing before me with that bouquet, he looked like a man ready to sever ties. "I'm moving out," he said, his tone calm yet resolute. "I don't want to carry regrets. You wouldn't want me to still think about someone else after we're married, would you? If I don't succeed, I'll let her go completely. I'll dedicate myself to you for the rest of my life." His eyes were red, his voice thick with emotion. It should have moved me. It should have made me feel closer to him. Instead, all I felt was a hollow ache in my chest. How could I say no? I had always known where I stood in Jay's heart. Second place behind Linda. On my 18th birthday, when I shifted for the first time, I begged the moon goddess for a miracle. I prayed Jay would be my destined mate. But fate had other plans. The moon goddess chose Linda Man wearing for him, a picture-perfect beauty adored by everyone. At the mate ceremony, they were the golden couple basking in admiration, while I endured the searing pain of rejection alone. Then Linda left, and I saw my chance. I pursued Jay relentlessly, ignoring the whispers and judgment. I believed love could be earned through effort alone. From the start, he had been honest. "I still love Linda," he told me. "If that bothers you, you shouldn't be with me." I thought I could wait. I thought time would fix everything. But now, as he stood before me, asking for my permission to chase after her, I realized how naive I'd been. "Okay," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside. "Go." Jay studied my face for a moment before smiling. "Thank you for understanding me," he said. Then, without hesitation, he turned away, packing his things with an eagerness that made my heart crack. Minutes later, he drove off into the night, leaving behind only the faint scent of his cologne and the echoes of my own foolishness. I glanced at the wedding souvenirs scattered across the floor. Once a symbol of hope, now a cruel joke. What a waste. They'd never be sent out. My eyes fell on the bouquet he'd brought. Among the petals, I noticed a small card tucked away. Curiosity prickled, and I hesitated before flipping it over. "Linda, long time no see. I hope you're doing well." The name hit me like a punch to the gut. So he bought 2 bouquets, one for me and one for her. And in his rush, he'd grabbed the wrong one. How fitting. Without a second thought, I tossed the bouquet into the trash. Later that night, my phone buzzed with a message from my mother. "The flight is booked for a week from now. You've been with the Red River Pack for so many years. Use this time to say goodbye." I stared at the screen for a long moment before typing a single word. Okay. While Jay chased his past, I spent my days letting go of mine. I had dinner with friends, revisited familiar places, and wandered the packlands that had once felt like home. Every evening, his calls came in like clockwork. "Selena, what are you up to? I miss you." "Nothing much," I replied, my voice steady. "Just packing up at home." I told him the truth. Alpha J didn't push for more, though he continued calling, updating me on where he was and what he was doing. He mentioned almost hesitantly how nervous he felt about seeing Linda after all these years. It was odd, this routine we'd fallen into. Over time, we'd grown accustomed to sharing everything. Whenever he traveled for work, it was second nature to exchange. "I miss you," and recount the trivialities of our days. Even now, as he prepared to reunite with her, he still called me as though nothing had changed. Habit, I realized, is a cruel master. I let the silence stretch between us for a while. "Are you upset? Why aren't you saying anything?" he asked, his tone edged with concern. "No," I replied softly, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. I wish you the best. How I managed to say it, I'll never know. He went quiet, the silence thick and heavy, before finally speaking in a low voice. I'll come back as soon as I can. No matter what happens, I love you. For a fleeting moment, I wanted to believe him. Maybe I even did. But belief wouldn't change anything now. This time, I was ready to let go. 3 days later, Alpha J returned. I hadn't expected him back so soon, but what truly stopped me cold was the sight of who stood beside him. Linda. I remembered our first meeting vividly. Back then, I couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy. Linda was the kind of woman who shattered expectations with reckless ease. A little wild, magnetic in ways that demanded attention. She was stunningly beautiful, radiating confidence and an undeniable charm. The air between us now hung heavy, burdened with years of unspoken history. Her natural charisma was something I could never replicate. Where she embodied freedom, I was a product of discipline and carefully cultivated propriety. She still carried that untamed elegance, a tattoo curled along the curve of her neck, her sunglasses perched casually atop her head, loose curls spilling over her shoulders. Selena, long time no see, she said, her voice familiar but softened by weariness. This wasn't the same Linda I remembered. She politely asked if she could come in, and though I was too stunned to speak, I stepped aside. As she passed, her arm brushed against a decorative bear wearing a wedding bow tie. The little figure toppled to the floor. Without hesitation, she crouched, retrieved it, and handed it back with a faint, almost apologetic smile. I forgot to congratulate you, she said. I wish you and Alpha J a happy wedding. Her words were polite, even kind, but they carried an undercurrent I couldn't quite place. I nodded, unsure how to respond. Linda's gaze drifted around the living room, taking in the sparse furnishings. The house felt hollow. Most of my belongings had already been sent to the Silver Claw Pack's territory. What remained were things that belonged to Alpha J, or shared mementos I couldn't bring myself to sort through. Alpha J noticed too. His brow furrowed as he glanced around. Selena, he said, confusion coloring his tone. Why does the house feel so empty? I've just been organizing and clearing out a few things, I said casually, brushing off his concern with a vague excuse. Linda sat down and removed her sunglasses, revealing deep bruises around her eyes and faint scars etched across her face. In that moment, I understood why she seemed different. The unshakable confidence she once radiated was gone, dulled by hardship and loss. As you can see, Linda said softly, her voice steady despite everything, I'm not doing well. She told me how her life hadn't unfolded the way she'd imagined. The rogue king she once called her true love had never planned to marry her. To him, I was just a passing distraction, she admitted, bitterness lacing her words. Trapped in the rogue lair, she had spiraled into depression, unable to return to the life she once knew. It wasn't until I reached out to Alpha J that things started to change, she said quietly. Thanks to his help over the years, I never lost myself completely. Beside me, Alpha J tensed. His unease rolled off him in waves. It wasn't just about her confession. It was the confirmation that they had never truly lost contact. Linda didn't stop. Her voice remained soft, steady, almost gentle. Alpha J spends a month with me every year, always at the end of the year. Without him, I wouldn't have made it through. The words landed like a punch to the gut. Suddenly, everything clicked. His so-called Wolfpack business trips, the vague excuses every December, the expansion efforts, the alliances he claimed to be securing. None of it had been real. He hadn't been tending to the pack. He had been with her. Linda glanced at me, gauging my reaction before continuing. When Alpha J started growing his pack's business, I heard you sold your dowry to give him the startup capital. Even from afar, I admired your loyalty. I said nothing. The weight of her words pressed down like a lead shroud. Loyalty. That's what I had given him. Unwavering. Absolute. And in return, I was in trouble at the time too, Linda admitted, her voice quieter now. My life was falling apart. So, Alpha J sent me $200,000 to help. The number rang in my ears. $200,000. Suddenly, I remembered the missing funds from the Red River PAC's accounts, the ones brushed off as a bookkeeping error. It hadn't been an oversight. It hadn't been a mistake. It was a secret, a carefully concealed piece of Alpha J's life with Linda, one I was never meant to uncover. In just a few words, I understood the depths of what Alpha J had done for Linda. I was able to return to the Red River PAC this time. All thanks to Alpha J, she said, turning to me with a soft smile. Selena, I have no hostility toward you, she added, her tone calm, almost gentle. Let's try to get along well in the future, okay? Her words sounded like a polite request, but they carried the subtle weight of moral obligation. Linda had endured so much. All she seemed to want now was peace. Refusing her would only make me look cold-hearted. But what exactly did she mean by getting along well? Before her words might have sparked anger in me. No one wants someone else meddling in their relationship. Now it was almost laughable. How could I take their requests seriously? Fine, get along well, I replied, the words slipping out with startling ease. It didn't matter. I was leaving soon. Why bother making a scene? That night, Linda took the master bedroom, while Alpha J and I stayed in the second bedroom. Next door, Linda's depression is severe, Alpha J explained. She cries for hours every night. The master bedroom is soundproofed, so she won't disturb you. I agreed without protest, though I hardly cared. As we lay in bed, he held me close, just as he always had, his chest warm against my back, his breath soft against my neck, a familiar ticklish sensation trailing down my spine. And then his words pierced through the silence, cutting like a blade. Selena, I think Linda is different now. She's changed, and I can't help but feel she's dirty. I froze, my body tense. You've noticed it too, haven't you? He sighed heavily, but I just can't let go of her. I feel sorry for both of you, I said quietly, but believe me when I say I will only marry you. I love you. The words felt hollow, their weight doing nothing to fill the growing void between us. Perhaps he had been drinking too much with Linda earlier. That night he rambled endlessly, sharing thoughts he should have kept to himself. Things that hurt more deeply than I could bear. When I finally began to drift into sleep, the bed felt suddenly empty. Alpha J was gone. The next morning, I woke to see him stepping out of the master bedroom. Linda needs to take her medication regularly, he said casually. I went in to remind her. I didn't question him. I simply nodded, feigning understanding. At breakfast, Linda struggled with one of the dishes. Without hesitation, Alpha J rushed downstairs to a convenience store and returned with a steak. Normally, he never cooked, but this time, he stood in the kitchen frying the steak himself. It was beautifully plated when he placed it in front of her. Linda turned to me with a teasing smile. Alpha J is so good at taking care of people. You must have been so happy all these years, right? I smiled faintly, offering no response. In all our years together, Alpha J had never cooked. Not once. He couldn't even stand the smell of oil or smoke in the kitchen. And yet, here he was preparing a steak with ease, as if he'd done it countless times before. He didn't know how to cook at first, Linda mused, almost boasting, but every year when he came to see me, he'd make steak. Over time, he got better. You know, Alpha J is really good at cooking, right? Her tone was light, almost casual, but her meaning was clear. She was staking her claim, as if I hadn't been the one by his side all these years. Alpha J shifted uncomfortably, glancing at me. I'm sorry, Selena. I've been busy lately, but I'll definitely cook for you more in the future. I laughed it off. The sound hollow. I had no interest in his empty promises. After breakfast, Alpha J hurried to take Linda to the hospital for her checkup. I quietly dragged my suitcase out of the room. He stopped and looked at me confused. Are you going on a business trip? You didn't mention it. Yes, I said simply. He was in such a rush that he didn't ask any more questions before leaving. Perhaps Alpha J truly cared too much about Linda. Otherwise, the Alpha J I knew, attentive, meticulous, would have noticed that all my documents were gone, that every trace of me had already been erased from the house. Are you leaving now? His voice startled me, breaking the silence. There were still 3 hours until my flight, yet somehow I found myself at the crossroads of my life with him. I had spent so many sleepless nights wondering, what would life be like without Alpha J? What would it feel like to walk away? I hadn't expected it to happen like this, on such an ordinary morning, or so plainly. Yes, I'm leaving now, I said quietly but firmly. Alpha J stood by the door, his hand resting on Linda's arm. She had just complained of feeling unwell, and he was helping her. When he saw me struggling with my suitcase, he instinctively started to step forward, but then he hesitated. His gaze flickered to Linda, and just like that, he couldn't take that step. I'll take you, he offered after a pause. No, I replied evenly. It's not on the way to the hospital. I'll just take a taxi. He exhaled softly, visibly relieved. Turning back to Linda, he guided her downstairs with careful attention. Before he disappeared from view, I called out softly, Alpha J, goodbye. He didn't look back. He walked away quickly as if the word meant nothing. I wasn't even sure he had heard me at all. At the airport, as I waited for my flight, a message popped up on my phone. It was the physical examination report for Linda. Head forwarded it to me. Selena, she's in terrible condition. Not just severe depression, but also a serious infectious disease. I can't accept her like this. My breath caught. So, this was it. After years of indecision, the choice he had agonized over was finally, not by his heart, but by circumstance. A second message followed shortly after. Our wedding will be held as scheduled. Have you booked your parents' tickets? I stared at the screen for a long moment, my emotions a strange, quiet storm. Then, without hesitation, I took a screenshot of a flight to the Shadow Fang Pack and sent it to him. I've waited for you for so many years, Alpha J. I'm tired of waiting. Let's break up. The moment I hit send, my phone rang. Flight CX-3521 to the Silver Claw Pack is now boarding. Passengers, please proceed to Gate 6. The announcement echoed through the terminal. I glanced at my phone one last time. Alpha J's final message glowed on the screen. Selena, do you dare to leave me? Dare? What was there to fear? Alpha J. I was never your second choice. Never the consolation prize after your so-called first love fell apart. I once loved you and you took advantage of that. But now that love is gone. Without hesitation, I removed my SIM card, slipped it into my pocket, and boarded the plane without looking back. As the aircraft descended, memories flooded my mind. I thought back to the first time I met Linda. It was at the airport. The moment I saw her, I knew I would never replace her in Alpha J's heart. She was striking, confident, impossible to ignore. Even though I had been with Alpha J for a year by then, I could see it in his eyes. He was still captivated by her. Back then, I was just a student. Next to her, I felt small, like I didn't belong in their world. She smiled at me, and in that moment, I felt as if I were standing before my greatest rival. After all, she was Alpha J's ex. Was she trying to provoke me? To flaunt their past? Or was she silently telling me that I would never be enough for him? I braced myself for her words, but what she said next took me completely off guard. "I'm getting married soon." I blinked. "Don't worry," she added lightly. "I have no reason to be hostile toward you." She absent-mindedly spun the ring on her finger. "I'm just curious about his current girlfriend." As she spoke, a genuine smile spread across her face. The kind that only came when talking about someone you truly loved. And then, I noticed something I hadn't before. Without that smile, Linda's eyes, her eyebrows, they looked like mine. Everything clicked. I thought back to when I first met Alpha J. The odd questions he had asked me. "Do you have a sister named Linda?" I never understood why he preferred me expressionless, why he always said I looked better when I didn't smile. But now I knew. Maybe, just maybe, he had been drawn to me because I reminded him of her, because I was just similar enough to keep her memory alive. Linda didn't waste time on small talk. She must have seen the questions in my eyes because she answered them before I could ask. Alpha J had dropped out of school for a year because of her. It had taken everything in him to claw his way back, to get into university again. "If you had met him back then, you wouldn't have even spared him a glance," she admitted. "He was rotten to the core. And the reason? She had made him that way. Before meeting her, he wasn't like that." She told me how it all began. They had been leaving a bar. Her companion got drunk and accidentally injured her. Alpha J stepped in to protect her. That moment fascinated Linda so much that she started following him around, pestering him day after day, until eventually they became a couple. I swallowed hard. "What happened next?" I asked, almost afraid of the answer. But then Linda changed the subject. "We were just playing around back then," she said lightly. "But Jay, he took it too seriously, so seriously that in the end it scared me." "So she left him?" She sighed, and in that brief pause, I thought I caught something. Regret, maybe. A trace of something left unsaid. "But I'm very happy now," she added. Her expression softened, a quiet relief settling into her voice. "My husband is taking me to Rogue Lair, making me his queen, giving me the best life." She spoke casually, but there was certainty in her words. "And Jay should focus on his studies." She hesitated, then said, "He and I are on different paths now. But you're lucky. You're on the right one." After our meeting, I sent a message to Alpha J asking him to pick me up. I'll admit, it was partly to stake my claim, but in the end, I realized it wasn't necessary. I would never understand the bond between them. When they saw each other, they didn't say a single word. Yet, somehow an entire conversation seemed to pass between them. Maybe it was telepathic, or maybe it was just something I was never meant to understand. Jay took my hand, frowning. "Why are your hands so cold?" At the time, I didn't understand why he never spoke about Linda, why he never admitted he couldn't let go. But now I do. He was afraid of disturbing her life. After all, Linda was being whisked away in her husband's $1 million supercar, her face glowing with happiness. And me? I was blowing into my hands, bracing against the cold, riding on the back of Alpha J's electric scooter heading back to school. He didn't say another word the whole way. That night, we checked into a small hotel near campus. We marked each other, became each other's completely. As I drifted off to sleep, I heard Jay whisper, "I'll treat you well for the rest of my life." I never fully understood the connection between Jay and Linda. From my perspective, she had held him back. Before he dropped out, he was the top science student, the school's pride, the one with the brightest future. With his grades, he should have gone much further. Not just to the Werewolf University of Mississippi. Could have had his picks of the best universities, but because of Linda, he lost that chance. And in the end, she left him without hesitation. Yet Jay never blamed her. Never let her go either. Not for years. I didn't understand before, but now I do. The truth is simple. Alpha J was a fool. The moment I stepped off the plane in the Silver Claw pack, the sunlight hit me like a wave. The sun was blindingly bright. I hadn't seen sunlight like this in so long. "Is this Selena Glover?" a voice called out, crisp, direct. I turned. "I'm Harper Robinette from the Silver Claw pack. They sent me to pick you up." The moment I stepped out of the airport, a boy practically sprinted toward me. His expression a mix of relief and mild panic. "Why didn't you answer your phone?" "I was starting to think your flight got delayed, and I had no idea how I was supposed to track you down." I shook my phone at him. No SIM card. Took it out when I left the Red River pack. His eyebrows shot up and a grin tugged at his lips. "Disconnected from the old pack, huh? Let me guess. Boyfriend drama?" "Something like that," I muttered. He laughed, grabbing my bags and slinging one over his shoulder. "Man, you're bold. Don't worry though, you're gonna love it here. We'll throw you a party tonight. Celebrate your new freedom." I groaned. "Actually, I was thinking of starting with the training grounds." Harper didn't miss a beat, steering me toward the parking lot. "Training grounds it is, party animal. Let's hope the place hasn't fallen apart yet." As we drove, Harper filled me in. My parents always emphasized both individual combat and group tactics for the pack. "The thing is, we're solid as a team, but solo combat, that's where we fall behind. The Shadow Fang pack, on the other hand, is legendary for their individual trainers. They're leagues ahead of us in that department." I nodded, flipping through the training program folder he handed me. "They said you studied solo combat, right?" Harper asked, glancing at me. "Once upon a time," I admitted, skimming the outdated schedule. "But it's been a while. I've spent most of my time dealing with Alpha J and his packhouse politics." Harper winced. "Ouch. Well, you're here now. Time to dust off those skills." The more I read, the more intrigued I became. My parents had always wanted me to find something I was passionate about, and wolf training had always been my thing. Maybe they sent me here for a reason. "Mind if I borrow your phone for a sec?" I asked. "Sure," Harper said, handing it over without hesitation. I called my parents to let them know I'd arrived safely. My mom answered on the first ring, her voice a mix of relief and something sharper. "Selena, Alpha J doesn't know you left, does he?" "Nope," I replied, bracing for the inevitable. "Well, he's been calling non-stop. Even reached out to the administrative line at the Shadowfang Packhouse." I could practically hear her eye roll. "He even flew over to see us, but your father and I blocked him. He acts like he can't live without you now." "But where was that energy when he should have married you?" Ouch. Classic mom. "Lucky you're with the Silver Claw pack now. You don't need to deal with him anymore." Honestly, what a relief. I stayed quiet, letting her vent. Deep down, I knew she wasn't wrong. If Jay had truly cared, things wouldn't have ended like they did. Changing my surroundings had been the best decision I'd made in years. Though he still crossed my mind, my new life with the Silver Claw pack was proving to be overwhelming in the best possible way. The training grounds were more of a mess than I'd anticipated. What I thought would be simple wolf pack training turned out to be a full-blown reassessment of their entire system. A portion of the patrol team consisted of disabled wolves, fighters injured while protecting the Silver Claw pack. Their old combat techniques no longer worked for them, but the Alpha insisted they have stable jobs and dignity. It was my job to train the fully capable soldiers and find new methods for the injured wolves. Talk about a challenge. I dove headfirst into the work, attending meetings, joining discussions, and catching up on everything I'd missed. At first it was exhausting. The sheer weight of responsibility felt like too much. But then, I started to see progress. Injured wolves finding new techniques, rediscovering their strength. Watching them regain their confidence was the most rewarding thing I'd experienced in a long time. Harper walked into the training arena one day, hands on his hips, watching as I guided a wolf through an exercise. You're smiling, he said, smirking. Am I? Yep. Don't worry. It looks good on you. I rolled my eyes, but deep down I knew he was right. For the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. A month after my move, Harper picked me up from the training grounds and immediately hit me with, "Wow, you've changed." I blinked at him. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? When we first met, I thought you were just this dull, emotionally wounded woman. But now, he gave me a once-over. You're kind of lively, charming even. I smirked. Charming? Careful, Harper. Compliments like that might go to my head. Maybe people here were just more generous with their praise. Or maybe all the sunshine and sea air really had worked some magic on me. Whatever it was, I felt different, confident even. I'd traded in my brooding Red River pack vibes for a whole new outlook. Life here was light, easy. My evenings were spent at the beach bar with my colleagues, where we drank, laughed, and sometimes argued over who had to pay the tab. Weekends were reserved for swimming in the ocean or sunbathing on the shore, where my skin had taken on a healthy, sun-kissed glow. Even my hair had gotten in on the transformation. It was wild and colorful now, thanks to a lost bet. One evening, as we huddled around a barbecue, dissecting the latest fighting competition, someone nudged me and pointed toward the distance. "Hey, Selena, looks like someone's searching for you." I squinted through this golden haze of the sunset and froze. Walking toward us was Alpha J, looking as out of place as a sheep in a wolf pack. His usual confidence seemed to have been left behind, replaced by exhaustion. And was that hesitation? "Selena, I finally found you," he said, stopping a few feet away, his voice rough. I crossed my arms. "Yeah, long time no see, Jay." I checked flights, your parents' pack house, asked around. His words trailed off as he glanced at my friends, who were already smirking. "Visitor from the Red River pack," I announced, turning to my crew. "I'll be back in a bit." "Not so fast," one of them called. "You're not going anywhere until you finish your drink." Challenge accepted. I grabbed my glass, ready to down it in one go, but Jay stepped forward, snatching it from my hand. "Do you even know how to drink?" he asked like a disapproving parent. "I think I'll manage, thanks." Ignoring me, he took a swig. Big mistake. His face twisted and he coughed like he'd just chugged poison. "You were saying?" I deadpanned, taking the glass back and draining it with ease. My friends cheered, and I joined in their laughter, leaving Jay standing awkwardly off to the side. "We've been together how many years? And you still don't know I can drink?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. He shuffled his feet. "You never drank much around me." That made me laugh. "Yeah, because Linda didn't like drunks. You stopped drinking for her, remember?" The mention of her name made him wince. "That's not, and I wasn't about to reek of alcohol around you either." I cut him off. Back then I rarely drank either, but for a different reason, to avoid his judgmental glares. Memories surfaced. Times when I'd had too much to drink at business meetings, and colleagues had dragged me home. Alpha J's look of disapproval always lingered, so I'd scrub the scent of alcohol off my skin and crash in the guest room to avoid him. No wonder he thought I didn't drink. He didn't know me at all. He opened his mouth, probably to protest, but I wasn't done. "Trust me, Jay, I can drink anyone under the table if I want to. You just never bothered to notice." He hesitated, his voice almost apologetic. I just thought, is it like Linda? You can't stand it. Alpha J's face twisted, a flash of anger that he quickly shoved down. "Don't bring her up." He gritted out, his voice tight, but there was something in his eyes. I smirked inwardly. I was definitely not Linda. She was the kind of girl who needed saving, while I not so much. "Where's Linda? Didn't she come with you?" I asked, mostly out of curiosity, not trying to stir the pot. I had a feeling I wouldn't be happy with whatever answer he gave, but I had to ask. Linda was in rough shape, depressed. So, someone needed to look after her. If something went wrong, Who would be responsible? What if in the future Alpha J came to me and said he couldn't go back to care for Linda because he'd come to see me? Wouldn't that leave me feeling terribly wronged? Don't bring her up, he snapped again, his jaw twitching with barely suppressed frustration. She and I are done. I took a step back, still watching him, feeling like I was seeing him for the first time. Oh, he was a classic case of self-absorption. He didn't care about Linda. He cared about his own pride. If he'd really loved her, he wouldn't have left her in the first place. Instead, he'd chosen to chase some fantasy of their college love only to realize it was already long gone. Now he was trying to pick up the pieces, but this time I wasn't one of them. Alpha J. You're so boring, I said, unable to hide my disappointment. I really overestimated you, didn't I? I thought you didn't keep Linda back then, because you thought you weren't good enough for her. But nope, it wasn't that. You just couldn't handle the blow to your ego, so you pretended to be the bigger person. Before I could go on, he cut me off, stepping toward me with that familiar urgency. He stepped closer, just like in the past when we argued, intending to pick me up and take me away. But I didn't obey Alpha J anymore. Not this time. He wasn't getting away with this again. I wasn't that same girl anymore. Since he had come all this way to perform his dramatic win-back routine, I felt it was time to finally vent. I shifted, using the self-defense moves I'd picked up at the Silver Claw Pack, throwing a quick elbow strike that knocked him off balance. He stumbled, eyes wide like I'd just slapped him in the face. You know, I said, smirking, I learned some self-defense moves back at Blue Moon. Never thought I'd use them on you, though. It took him a moment to regain his composure. Selena, we've been through so much together, he said, trying to reel me back in. My feelings for you haven't changed. I still love you. I used to love looking into his eyes. I could almost feel his love, or what I thought was love. But now, all I saw were lies, and the years I wasted waiting for him to see me as more than his backup. Then, without warning, he pulled a ring out of his pocket and dropped to one knee. Selena, he started, looking up at me with that pleading look. Let's forget about Linda. She was just I didn't even hear the rest of his words. The sight of that ring felt like a punch to the gut. I had imagined this moment for so long. I dreamt of the fancy proposal, maybe over a candlelit dinner, or on a rooftop with a view. But no, here I was, standing on a beach in a plain shirt and jeans. At dusk, no flowers, no romantic setup, just me and him, like we were picking up where we left off. If this had happened before, I might have melted. I would have accepted the ring, ignoring the rest of the world. But now, all I wanted was to hurl that stupid ring and its box right at his head. So what? I snapped, frustration bubbling up. Do I really deserve to wait around all these years for this? Just to be your backup plan? Just like when Linda dumped you, I said coldly. You chose me because I have a good family background. I look a bit like her, and I was stupid enough to love you unconditionally. Alpha J's expression darkened, but I didn't stop. So, I was your plan B all along? You really thought I'd just sit here, waiting for you to come back, and then throw myself into your arms like nothing happened? His jaw tightened. I wish I had never met you, I whispered, my voice breaking. I fought the urge to hurl the ring at his face. Instead, I turned on my heel and walked away, heading straight back to my friend's party. The salty sea breeze stung my eyes. Or at least, that's what I told myself. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't stop the tears from falling. My friends must have sensed something was wrong because they didn't bombard me with questions. They just handed me tissues and picked up the conversation where it left off, pretending like nothing had happened. Harper came over and patted my back, smirking. You lied to me, Selena, he teased. Didn't you say you didn't have an ex-boyfriend? And yet, here he is, still deeply tangled in your life. I shot him an annoyed look and swatted his arm. Unfazed, he grinned. You know what your problem is? You need a new relationship to forget about the old one. Why don't you consider me? I blinked at him, speechless. Harper shrugged. Fine, fine. If not me, then at least let me take you to the liveliest party in Silverclaw Pack. You'll meet new guys, and soon, this will all be just a bad memory. I rolled my eyes and waved off his ridiculous suggestion. After saying goodbye to my friends, I headed to the training ground to clear my head with some work. The place was eerily quiet, the only sound being the rustling of papers as I sorted through files. But no matter how hard I tried to distract myself, Alpha J's words kept replaying in my mind. And then, suddenly, I remembered something. Just before I walked away, he had said, "Selena, I'll only keep you this time. But don't worry. I won't pester you anymore. I won't see you again." Then his voice had turned cold. "You and Linda are the same. I don't want to face either of you again." At the time, I had been too caught up in the moment to process his words. It wasn't until early the next morning when I heard the wail of police sirens that everything started to make sense. A squad car sped past me, lights flashing, as Harper rushed out of the training ground and pulled me aside. "Selena," he said, his face unusually serious. "Something happened." Then, in a voice laced with disbelief, he told me the news. Alpha J had been arrested, covered in blood. I sucked in a sharp breath. My head spun. In the dim morning light, I thought I saw him as they took him away. And for the briefest moment, he smiled at me. Harper's voice pulled me back. "Selena, this is insane. Your ex-boyfriend was involved in a shooting." My heart pounded. Who did he attack?" Harper hesitated. "That's the weird part. It had nothing to do with you." The words barely registered. Then, like a reflex, a name slipped from my lips. "Linda." Harper gave me a sharp look before nodding. "Yeah, but it's deeper than that. The man Jay shot, he was a rogue king. He showed up here looking for you." I felt my stomach drop. Harper went on, his voice tense. "That rogue, he might have been the one who took Linda to the rogue lair, the one who abused her." I'd barely heard the rest of what he was saying. Later, when I dug up the Rogue King's records, I found a blurry photo of him, and in that moment, everything became clear. Alpha J hadn't come to the Silver Claw Pack to win me back. He had come for something else entirely. Maybe it was revenge. Maybe it was justice. Either way, the person who had tormented Linda for years was about to pay. 3 days later, the police called me in for questioning. "Have you been extorted or had your personal safety threatened recently?" one of the officers asked, his gaze sharp. I frowned, shaking my head. "No, not that I know of." They exchanged glances before continuing. "Have you noticed anything unusual? Anyone suspicious hanging around?" I hesitated. My social circle was small. Colleagues, industry contacts. I hadn't been in Silver Claw Pack long enough to make enemies. Or so I thought. Then they showed me the surveillance footage. The grainy black and white video played on a screen. 2 figures loitered near my house over the past week. One of them, just this morning, had slipped something into the fresh milk I usually ordered. "A hallucinogen," the officer explained. "You're lucky you didn't drink it." A chill crawled up my spine. "I was in a rush today," I murmured. "Didn't pick up the milk." They replayed the footage, zoom in on the taller figure. My breath hitched. Alpha J. The police took me to see him. When I entered the room, he was already seated, hands cuffed, eyes duller than I had ever seen them. I sat across from him, my heart pounding. "You poisoned me." My voice trembled with disbelief. His lips curved into a bitter smile. "Selena, am I really so unbearable to you?" The weight of his words pressed down on me, suffocating. "Why were you near my house, Jay? Why didn't you come to me first?" His gaze darkened. "I arrived last week. I found you then. But do you know why I didn't approach you?" I swallowed. unease settling in my stomach. He exhaled sharply. The one who hurt Linda, he couldn't go back to the Red River Pack to take her. So he came for you instead. My breath hitched. Memories flickered. Combat tournaments, fleeting encounters. I had never imagined our paths would cross like this again. He knows who you are, Selena. He knows you're connected to me. Jay continued, his voice rough. His hands trembled slightly against the cuffs. Realization crashed over me. You followed him. You were trying to protect me. Jay didn't answer right away. He just stared at me, his expression unreadable. That day, what you said, you didn't want me to go through what Linda did. My voice barely rose above a whisper. Still no response. The officers led him away to finalize the legal process before sending him back to the Werewolf Council for sentencing. Before leaving, he pressed a folded envelope into my hand. Inside was an old photo of our graduation day. A moment frozen in time back when I had scribbled in my yearbook, "Selena will marry Jay, a couple for life." On the back, in his familiar handwriting, were just a few words. "I owe you. I hope to repay it." A dull ache settled in my chest, lingering long after he was gone. A year later, I returned to the Shadowfang Pack and took my father's place as Alpha. The Red River Pack, weakened by internal strife, had no choice but to merge with ours. Something made possible by my early financial investments. Jay had been imprisoned, and without, his pack crumbled. 3 years passed. On the day of his release, I was there waiting. I drove him back to the house we had once shared for 7 years. It was just as he left it, clean, untouched, maintained by hired workers. But there was no trace of me, not anymore. Following tradition, I set out a brazier to ward off evil spirits. The smell of burning herbs filled the air. "Linda is doing well," I told him. "I helped her find a job in another wolf pack. She's safe." Jay didn't respond. I pulled something from my pocket. His old letter, the one with our graduation photo. I handed it back. "Alpha Jay," I said softly, "I hope you live a good life." His eyes didn't meet mine. They were locked on my left hand, on the wedding ring I was wearing. "Are you married?" I had just turned to leave when Alpha Jay finally spoke. His voice was quiet, almost hesitant. I paused, my fingers absently turning the ring on my finger. "Yes." His gaze lingered. "We're fated mates," I continued, my tone even. "A perfect match. He loves me very much, and I love him too." The words felt strangely familiar, an echo of the past. I remembered when Linda had told me the same thing, that she had found her mate, that she was getting married. Jay was silent for a long moment before he finally said, "I wish you happiness." Something in his voice made my chest tighten, but I didn't waver. Then, after what felt like forever, he spoke again, his words soft, tinged with something almost regretful. "If I hadn't insisted on finding Linda back then, do you think things would have been different for us?" My fingers stilled against my ring. I didn't answer because I didn't know. For years, I had been nothing more than a bystander in this story, a passive observer while Jay made all the decisions. Maybe in another version of events, things would have been different, but that wasn't the path we had taken. "Alpha Jay," I said quietly, "I'm actually glad you brought this up." He looked at me then, waiting. "Otherwise," I admitted, exhaling slowly, "it would have been harder to end things if we had actually gotten married. I wanted to end things gracefully, and somehow we did." Jay didn't say anything after that. Whatever words he had been holding on to, whatever thoughts had lingered, he let them fade into the silence between us. Finally, he murmured, "I wish you happiness." I met his gaze one last time, steady and sure. "Yes," I said, "I will be happy." Then I turned and walked away.